All right, we'll get ourselves settled in and to our seats, and we will be ready to begin right at 12 on the dot, I think, in a minute. Steve, let's get the pulpit mic on, and then Jared and I will need 1 and 2 on, and we'll do on and off for ourselves. Thank you. All right, here we go. Dave, I think we're ready. Go ahead.
All right, thank you for joining us today for this year's annual parish meeting. We're going to go ahead and get started, so if you can go ahead and settle in, please. We'll start with an opening prayer from Father Noah.
Page 818 of our prayer book, a prayer for a church convention or meeting. Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with those who take counsel at Christ and St. Luke's for the renewal and mission of your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
So this is our annual parish meeting. This is a meeting that is prescribed in our parish bylaws. It's an important opportunity to us to address a couple items of business, including electing the new members of our vestry class. But it's also an exciting time where we can share with you all the things that are happening here at Christ and St. Luke's, and give you a chance to have some interaction and feedback with the church leadership. This is a formal meeting, so I'll ask if someone can please make a motion to begin the annual parish meeting. So moved by Margaret Inge. Second? Second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Well, that's good. All right, so our first order of business is to make our vestry election. The nominating committee has nominated 4 persons for your vestry. They are Virginia Darden, Chris Green, Mary Carson Stiff, and Robert Jones. The period for additional nominations had closed last week, and the church office did not receive any additional names. And so this is the vestry slate that is being proposed. Do I have a nomination to move these names to a vote? David Phillips. A second, please. And all in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you very much, and congratulations to our new class of vestry members. So in with the new and, I guess, out with the old. I'm Dave Cass. I am currently your senior warden, and I'm going to be sharing a few thoughts with you, and then we'll move on to some of the other speakers on the agenda. I'd like to start by saying that serving on your vestry for the last 4 years, and most recently as the junior and then senior warden, has been an extreme honor for me. I want to thank you for this opportunity to serve the parish. When I was growing up as a small boy, my parents were also very active in our little neighborhood church. And I can remember them stepping forward and volunteering and participating in the church activities. For example, every Sunday, we would stay behind and Mom and Dad would go into a small office at the back of the church and with several others would count the collection plate and organize that. And we kids were supposed to patiently wait for them. We weren't always very patient in that. I guess sometimes we were ornery. I'll share a story with you. I have a vivid memory of our minister, Pastor Vasillo, was not a very young man and was not in particular shape, but I have a vision of him sprinting at full speed across the field that separated his parsonage from the church. As he ran to find what the naughty cast children were doing, we had found a microphone and we were singing Elvis Presley songs into it, not realizing that that microphone was connected to the speakers up on the steeple that had recently been playing the church bells. It just occurs to me that my parents are watching this meeting, and that may be news to them. Mom, it was Linda's idea. It wasn't Linda's idea, but she's a lawyer now, and she's better handled to take that phone call from our parents. Some of the other things that my parents were involved with that I witnessed growing up, my father was a lay preacher, and when the minister would go on his summer vacation every year, I can remember my father giving the sermons. He was also in a leadership position, so I can remember very vividly him with his yellow legal pad and some 35mm slides that he had made with his camera that he was presenting the church budget to the annual parish meeting there one year. It's one of my earliest visions of him stepping up and making that example for me. I'm grateful, therefore, for the opportunity to have been graced with the blessings of this position and the service on the vestry, and an opportunity for me to follow in my parents' footsteps and share some of their faith journey with them. Those of you who know my husband Paul and I are probably familiar with the fact that we are both absolute Disney fanatics. We can't get enough of it. We vacation frequently in their venues, and if you walk through our house, you will see many, many, many Mickey Mouses. That despite the fact that the youngest resident in the house is 59 years old now. If you're our friends on social media, you also get blasted very frequently with pictures of us in front of castles or with princesses or experiencing theme rides. Years ago, when Paul and I first started going to Disney World down in Florida, we signed up for a behind-the-scenes tour there. It was a tour called The Keys to the Kingdom, and it was an opportunity to go behind the scenes into restricted areas that cast members usually are the only ones who get to see. These are areas like the famed utilidors, tunnels that run under the Magic Kingdom Park, and include things like employee break rooms in their cafeteria, and places where they can do behind-the-scenes work or store materials. There's also stairwells that pop up all throughout the park so cast members can appear through innocuous doors and suddenly be where they need to be. As we were getting ready to leave for that tour, I can remember Paul and I discussing whether this tour might have a negative impact on how we perceive the magic of a Disney theme park. If seeing behind that curtain would somehow jade our experience and lessen our enjoyment. When Father Wynn approached me 4 years about being on the vestry, I'll admit to having some of those same concerns. Would being part of the church politics, part of the inner workings of the church, somehow change my experience of the church? And would it somehow interfere with my worship here? Now I can tell you that we did take that Keys to the Kingdom tour. It didn't jade us. Seeing all the vastness of the infrastructure or what happened in those utilidors and other behind-the-scene locations at Disney World just gave us some more details of what went into running a place like that. It let us see the effort and hard work that goes into pulling off what we had termed magic. And it gave us a new appreciation for all the hard work of the cast members who made that magic happen. Now, I don't want to be too incredibly disrespectful by drawing analysis between the church and Mickey Mouse, but I'll tell you that my experience on the vestry had the same result. My hesitations of what I'd find behind the scenes here at Christ in St. Luke's were completely unfounded, and serving has been nothing but fulfilling and uplifting for me. There's no utilitors to tour through here, and there's no magical pneumatic tubes that allow us to shoot garbage from one side of a place to another like Disney can do. But I can tell you that there's a very similar inner working here that we saw there, and it's people. Behind the scenes here of our parish, you'll find a devoted cadre of hardworking, devout, and selfless individuals. They're what makes this happen. They're what makes this parish what it is. It includes our remarkable clergy who bring the gospel to life for us through the sermons they preach from this pulpit, the programs they design and run, the services they lead, and through their very interactions with us as parishioners. So to our clergy, where's Jared? Jess, and Vince is probably still cleaning garbage somewhere. But to our clergy, thank you. It also includes the marvelous staff of Christ in St. Luke's. They show us every day through their attitudes and their energy that working here is more than just a job for them. They've proven to us time and time again that there's nothing we can't accomplish here. We're made better by their presence and their contributions. They're some of the hardest working individuals I've ever met. And to our staff, I want to thank you. The success here also includes lay leaders and many, many volunteers. These are people who have found a niche to use their talents and their abilities to contribute to our church and its mission. There are more guilds, teams, ministries, and committees here than I could even attempt to name, but each one of them plays an important role in who we are as a community. Every one of those ministries relies on volunteers, people who are willing to give of their time and of themselves to make those ministries a success. And if you've come here during the week, on any given day, at any time of the day, you'll find something happening here. There's a beehive of activity that proves that the parishioners here at Christ in St. Luke's are doing that. They're volunteering for the ministries that are meaningful to them, and they're making those ministries successful. I'd like us to try to visualize who we are as volunteers. So if you'll bear with me, please. If during the past year you have been, this is a long list, a participant in a service, in the choir, a musician, a verger, an acolyte, a crucifer, a Eucharistic minister, a lector, an intercessor, an usher, a greeter, on the AV team, if you brought coffee hour stuff or helped to set up or clean up coffee hour, if you volunteered your time to prepare the church for a service on the altar guild or the flower guild, or by polishing brass or by cleaning something, if you volunteered time to make one of our ministries possible, if you've attended a meeting as a member of a committee or a team, if you've knitted or needle-pointed, if you've written letters or made phone calls, if you've made a meal for us to share in fellowship or to help a neighbor in need, if you've helped us to set up chairs, take out trash, or wash dishes, if you've prayed for us, if you've given of yourself because you feel God's presence here and want to experience Christ and St. Luke's as a place of love and share that with others, would you please stand so we can thank you? If you had volunteered for anything this year at Christ and St. Luke's, would you please stand? That's very heartening to see the number of people that fit into those categories. But that's not everyone that's contributing here. Also, very importantly, things that make us successful as a parish is every single person who calls this their spiritual home. I've never met such a caring, welcoming, and generous group of individuals. And others who have visited here have commented with similar thoughts. You truly do embody our baptismal vows. The You Belong spirit that Paul and I were so remarkably struck by when we visited here for the first time many years ago is still just as strong today. Let's give ourselves a round of applause because we're each making a difference here. All right, that's it for my cheerleading section of my presentation. Sadly, my time as your senior warden ends in, well, just a few minutes. It really depends on how long Father Noah's going to talk. And as something comes to an end, it's within our very nature to look back on that and reminisce and think about what's happened. And as I prepared for this speech with you today, I did just that. And I looked back at what the vestry looked like and what the church looked like 4 years ago when I attended my first vestry meeting. If you'll remember, we were just venturing back into live in-person services after the pandemic, and we were still trying to figure out what our new normal was going to look like. We were gathering here in a church complex that was completely torn apart by construction. There was a giant hole in the ground where one part of our building had once been. There weren't offices for our staff. There weren't classrooms or meeting rooms. We didn't have heat or air conditioning for much of the time. We didn't have water. We had porta potties that we were using out in the garden there. Now, I'll pause here for a side note that I am grateful from that time with the porta potties here because forever for the rest of my life, I will no longer be traumatized by a porta potty. It's opening up new experiences to me that I don't have to check for plumbing when we're going somewhere. One of the other things that we were facing as a parish at that time was the uncertainty of what changes were going to happen as our rector was transitioning into retirement and we were beginning to search for his successor. Many of the meetings that we attended for the vestry in those early days were in that Brady Bunch grid of a Zoom call online. A couple of them were intense out here on the garden. But we started to make things happen. We stuck to it and we got through it. And wow, what a long way we have come in those years. I'd like you to visualize with me, please, the service that we just concluded and how full this room was. The services from Christmas Eve, where we filled this room to overflowing twice in one night. The first Thursday supper that we had in December, where we filled every single chair that the Martin Mansion had to offer. Now, I'm not going to steal the thunder from the speakers who are going to follow me. They have some very detailed things that they're going to talk about, and they're going to share some great news. But as your senior warden, I will share with you that from my vantage, the state of our parish is very sound. We're on an excellent footing for growth in our ministries, our missions, and our outreach. And this will continue to be a place where God is worshiped and the faithful can gather in the body of Christ for many years to come. The new vestry we just elected a few minutes ago has some exciting things to continue working on. I look forward to hearing about the new successes they're going to add and the wonderful things, the new things that they're going to add to the wonderful things that are already happening here and working here in God's name. Before I close, please allow me to add a few more personal thank yous. Noah, it's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to work so closely with you. I particularly remember the vestry retreat that you organized and how well that was received. And I really cherished the time that you and Margaret and I had together in our rector and warden breakfasts that we did. Thank you. Heidi, Stephen, and Kim, thank you for your leadership and the examples that you set when you were wardens that allowed me to grow into my role as a junior and then senior warden. I look up to each of you. To all the vestry persons who served with me over the past 4 years, thank you for the spirit of cooperation, trust, and caring that exemplified every one of our vestry meetings and every one of the decisions that we made for this parish. And finally, I'd like to thank a few members of the vestry who are rotating off of that service with me this year. Margaret Inge, our junior warden, Maria Booth, our treasurer, and Earl Lewis, a former senior warden here, who came back and volunteered to fill a vacant position on the vestry. Would each of you please stand so that we can recognize you and thank you for everything you've done as well. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you for your attention. I will now turn it over to Father Noah for the rector's report.
Thank you, Dave, for your years of service. Thank you also for the new idea that you have just given us to install pneumatic garbage tubes in the church. I'd like to announce our new capital campaign for 2026. Maybe. But first, let's start by looking back. 2024 was a pivotal year in the life of Christ in St. Luke's, and I use that word intentionally. Perhaps nowhere is that more evident than, as Dave indicated, the fact that in these pages the only significant building update to share is this, that we are done with our renovation. This remains the huge success that we celebrated it to be in October at our building blessing and block party, but it is perhaps most notable for the fact that the state of our buildings no longer dominates the narrative of our parish. We have begun to use them so fully that it is the programs and the ministries and the people populating those physical spaces who have become the real story. For example, we have welcomed the Williams School Preschool onto our campus, and that relationship has blossomed even more wonderfully than we had hoped. We have returned to hosting support groups and meetings and other events at the church. We are preparing to open our kitchen, not only to our Thursday lunch ministry guests, but also for the use in our parish, and perhaps most blessedly, bathroom jokes are no longer funny at the church. We've also done some important work internally in that transition. We have retired our capital campaign steering committee, and so I would like to take this last chance to thank those individuals who served on that committee. So if you did serve as a member of our capital campaign steering committee for any length of time, would you please stand so we can thank you once and for all for that effort. Thank you. And we have stood up in its place a new Buildings and Grounds Committee, which, along with our newly hired facilities manager back there working the cameras, will oversee the continued care and maintenance of our facilities. This was a big and very important shift to make, because there is still much work to do to keep everything in good working order, and there are new problems that have emerged with our building, but we are now very intentionally settling into a time when that work will be done as a regular rhythm of our parish life. I will note, however, that just because our renovation is concluded does not mean the capital campaign is over, because we are still hoping that if you have a balance on your pledge, you will pay it, because we still do have invoices to pay, and this will set us up financially for the continued care of our facilities through our newly created Capital Reserve Fund, which we will use to plan for major capital expenditures in the future so as to be prepared when they inevitably come and to avoid having to run campaign after campaign every few years. I'll say a little bit more about that fund later in the meeting. Getting our buildings the establishment of the new Capital Reserve Fund was part of some other really great work that was done by your lay leadership this year. Members of the Vestry and Finance Committee have been meeting regularly to update our financial trust agreement so as to make sure it is as clear and organized as best it can be to help us achieve our missional goals. And like I said, a fuller report on those amendments will be made later in the meeting. But I am very grateful for the support of that team and what we called our endowment powwows. Getting our buildings in working order and our finances even better prepared to support us has meant that the real work of the church, worship and liturgy, spiritual formation, faithful fellowship, loving service to our neighbors can take center stage, and that has resulted in too many highlights to mention. The growth in all these areas is something we are giving great thanks for. As you will note below in your report, at the bottom of my remarks, our average Sunday attendance has increased about 50% from 2022 to 2024. That is a staggering rate of growth, especially given the current cultural climate around the mainline Christianity. And that has meant that our other programming and our stewardship has grown as well, which is thrilling. We are so grateful for that and for every person who belongs to this family of faith, those who are new and those who have been here for decades. And I will reassert what I have in the past, that as we grow, we are still committed to keeping the sense of community, a place where you're known and loved and needed, that distinguishes Christ and St. Luke's, hence our theme for this program year, keeping community. But to be able to do that with our larger numbers is going to require some shifts in how we operate. It is our expectation that over the coming year, one of the new areas of development for the parish will be the emergence of more small groups and ministries to help us stay connected to one another and continue to grow in faith. We don't just want to keep growing and growing, swelling our numbers without purpose. We want first and foremost to be a place where people grow in faith, hope, and love. And sometimes large events work in accomplishing that. But sometimes you need smaller tributaries off the main river to really engage in the life of the Spirit with your fellow disciples. So look for more of those ways to do that in 2025, and please do join in where you feel called. Of course, our Sunday morning services will continue to be the cornerstones of our community, and I remain incredibly grateful to all the people, Dave mentioned many of them, who work so hard to make those services happen. And I personally want to thank our incredible staff for their tireless efforts this past year, and I am going to make you guys stand up. So if you are here and a member of the staff, would you please stand so we can thank you one more time? They are the ones who have helped us make this pivot from under construction to fully active parish so well. And it has not been easy. And you should all know that you are blessed to be served by an incredible team of individuals who give more time and energy to this place than can ever be repaid. I also want to thank our vestry for their hard work this year, especially that incredible outgoing vestry class. You have been served by such capable, kind, and committed leaders in Earl and Maria and Margaret and Dave. And I will remind everybody that in that time of transition that Dave spoke about, Dave and Margaret and Maria, as well as many other members of the vestry at that time, agreed to serve an extra year in their term to maintain some stability. So they have given 4 rather than the usual 3 years of service to this parish, and for that I personally am very grateful, and we all should be as well. So they are leaving their own mark on this parish in its long history and setting itself up for a bright future, and I have a little gift for you guys later, so don't leave without it. Speaking of the future, I think 2025 is going to be the one of the most fun and exciting years in the history of Christ and St. Luke's. Fully free now to be the parish God is calling us and equipping us to be, with the information that was so generously gathered and given in our Holy Listening campaign, with a strong financial outlook and the winds of the Spirit in our sails. I look forward with great anticipation to what is to come, while giving great thanks for that which is behind. This is truly an incredible place to serve, and as I round the bend on year number 3 as your rector, I continue to pinch myself with disbelief for the honor of being able to serve in that role. You, the many members of this one body with your many, many gifts, continue to humble me with your trust, inspire me with your faith, and gladden me to no end with the ways you live in love as Christ loved us. I have come to love this place very deeply, come to love each of you, the people of this parish, very deeply. And so for myself, for Melinda, Vincent, and Arthur, thank you for loving us in return, and for so graciously coming alongside us as together we try to do the work that God has given us to do in this time and in this glorious place. Thank you very much. Before we turn it over to Father Jared for his report on the Holy Listening campaign, I do want to take a moment, because I know some of them are here, that for our new vestry class, who's stepping into this exciting time that has fewer building updates, would you guys please stand so we could recognize and thank each of you? So Virginia and Chris and Robert, who are here, would you guys be willing to stand so we can put faces to names? Thank you, guys. Mary Carson Stiff, another strong and wonderful leader in our parish, is at a family funeral out of town with her family today, so she cannot be here, but sends her regrets and regards. Okay, Jared, tell us what we've heard, okay?
Good afternoon, everyone. So, I am here to give the report on Holy Listening. You'll find a full report on some other activities of mine in the church in the report, and I will not regale you with those incredible details. I'll let you read them all by themselves. So, Holy Listening. We started about a year ago, actually at this meeting, of doing some very intentional one-on-one conversations with as many people as we could in the congregation, to map the different gifts, skills, and assets that are God-given. So if you heard me talk about 1 Corinthians 12 last week, and we heard further of that metaphor this week in our epistle reading, it's this idea that there is an incredible amount of ability and skills that exist within the diversity that is in our congregation. And so each of us is instilled, and we would say by God, with these different gifts, skills, and assets. And if we can find a way as a community to map those out, and then to be able to look at them with a very specific lens, we can figure out what God might be calling us to based on what God has put within our community. It's also a way of mobilizing and utilizing those different assets as well. It's one thing to have a skill, but if you don't know how to use it and when to use it, it might not be as helpful as it otherwise could be. And so that's the intentionality that we brought in to Holy Listening. And it's all based on this idea of asset-based community development, which is a mouthful, which is why we say ABCD. So asset-based community development is looking at the assets that exist within the community to grow that community, versus a needs-based assessment, which is saying, well, we need this, so let's figure out how to do that. It's an asset-based approach that says, let's look at what we have and build from what God has given us. And so that's the idea, at least, behind Holy Listening. And so where we are, having spent a year, we have trained over 28 Holy Listeners to go out and do these one-on-one conversations. So if you have been one of those 28 Holy Listeners and you're here today, would you please stand so we can thank you? They're not all here today. Thank you. Those listeners, each Holy Listening session takes about an average of 2 hours to 3 hours of that listener's time. So we're talking somewhere where 280 hours just on those 28 listeners doing this work in our community. So again, a huge thank you to our listeners for facilitating this. We conducted over 160 of these holy listening sessions. And so that accounts for, if you take about an hour for each of these conversations, often over, we're about 180 hours of talking about ourselves. So each of these conversations is a huge investment of time and energy into thinking about what God has placed within this community. So if you have been one of those 160 that got to participate in one of these, I also want to say thank you to you. We scheduled over 250 of these conversations, which is to say that that's not the fullness of our congregation, if you look at the ASA that we have, which is fantastic, but it is certainly a good slice of our congregation. It's who is actively participating. Now you might be thinking to yourself, I didn't get one of these calls, I didn't get an email. That's okay, we're going to get to that point, so hold it, all right? So 250 of about the 90 that were not completed, about 2/3 of those are from people we just didn't get a response from, or are said no to the participating, which is fine for whatever reason. There will be a chance after I explain the next kind of phase of our work to get into where we are in holy listening, to have your voice heard within this process. About 30 of those names are still, of that 90, are still active, and we hope to finish those up really soon so that we can move into some of the more exciting pieces of our data analysis. One of the things that's been so difficult about, and a good challenge, is this process has been designed specifically to be broad and wide-ranging. So this isn't a survey. This isn't just a check-the-box sort of scenario. If you participated in one of these surveys, you know just how broad they were in their scope. And so to take all of that data and then to have to distill it down and put it into something that could be quantifiable and qualitative for us to look at has been a significant challenge. And so Dave Cass has been working on that with us, and Dan Ambrose have been helping us design this system that we're going to use. So the goal of our data analysis of these 160, and soon to be as many as we put into them, because this is going to be an ongoing conversation within the life of our church, so that it's not just a snapshot of 2024, but rather a living document of what are the gifts, skills, and assets of Christ in St. Luke's at the present moment. So to do that, we are designing a system that looks at two different data goals. One of those is the macro analysis of looking at what is the overall trends that we are seeing within the data that help us to understand where we might be steering the boat. Where is there a large correlation of interest and skills and desires that we want to pay attention to and build ministries that might support that. Some of that is going to be data that we already know to be true, and it's just validating for that. This won't surprise anyone. We like music here. All right? We're seeing that in the data time and time again. One of the important charisms of this place is its ministry of music and of the arts, of paying attention to some of the beautiful assets that exist within Norfolk and within this community particularly that let us express that in musical natures and in different art installations and things of that nature. And so that's one of the things we're seeing in the data. There's also stuff that we might be missing. So part of our macro analysis is helping us to look at where there are things that we might have a natural blind spot to, but that we can highlight and say, look, there is a correlation of stuff we weren't paying attention to. How do we utilize the gifts, skills, and assets of this place to build a ministry around that? And so that's the goal of the macro analysis. The micro analysis is the goal too, is to pinpoint specific skills and assets. And this is the goal that's going to help us utilize and mobilize the different gifts and skills that are here. So taking those conversations that we've had and building a system in which we can discern and look at the very intricate data that we have. So say we see in our macro trends that there's a need for a medical ministry of some sort. We could then go into our micro data and say, can you show me the people that indicated that they have some sort of medical skill or background or interest? And then we can pull that data and mobilize and utilize that data in a way that helps us meet the macro trend. So that's just one example, one thing we are hoping to build out of this system. And a lot of that is really difficult because of the broad nature of these conversations. It's all about tracking and getting the right keywords and putting it into the system so that we can understand and make that a highly searchable thing that we can use. So that's part of where we are now. The deliverables over the course of the coming year for phase 1 of this report, and I'll get to phase 2 in just a second, but phase 1 is that internal phase that we've been working on. The goal for our macro trends is to be able to give you a written report by the end of this program year that looks at all of the different macro trends that we're seeing. Maybe not all of them. It's certainly not going to be a comprehensive report because there's just too much data in there. But we are certainly going to take some of the broad trends that we're seeing and then use what are called our holy readers that are going to be combing through this data. And those readers are then going to write a report based off the trends. So say we assign someone the trend of music ministry. They're going to read all of the entries that are based off of the music ministry or music in general and then write a report that shows specifically what are the interests and skills and passions related to this topic. We'll do the same thing with some of the top categories that we're seeing. And so that report will be available to us by the end of this program year. And we are in the process of writing that now and getting our holy readers set and on their way with that. And then the second deliverable is that asset database that I just mentioned. So the highly searchable way of being able to look at the data and help us utilize and mobilize the different gifts, skills, and assets that we have identified through these different holy listening conversations. And so that is ongoing, and we are figuring out the best way to tackle that. Phase 2 of this process is going to be an external conversation. So doing the same sort of asset mapping of saying, what are the gifts, skills, and assets of the broader Hampton Roads community? So not just Christ in St. Luke's, but we will certainly take the fruits of phase 1 and be able to match that up with what we find through phase 2 of saying, what are our gifts, skills, and assets, and what are we seeing out in the community, and what can we do together that might further part of what God is calling us to do? And that work is ongoing as well. It will not look the same as phase 1, but I imagine that we will have very similar deliverables for that. So looking at some sort of report that captures a lot of what we're looking at outside of our community, but also some sort of asset map that helps us visualize and see some of the different stuff that is out there that we are engaged in. So that is forthcoming. What if you missed your session? Which happened to a significant number of us. Don't worry about that at the present moment, because like I said, what we are trying to build is an ongoing system. This is going to be an ongoing piece of who we are as Christ in St. Luke's, is asking these questions. Because as we've seen in our ASA, that keeps going up, our Sunday attendance is rising, more and more people are becoming part of this community, which is a wonderful thing. But we want to be able to capture their gifts, skills, and assets as well, because this is a living place. This is part of who we are as being a community that changes and adapts as people come in and are a part of the life of this place. And so to build a system that allows for that, we need to build a way to keep adding data to what we are seeing. So that asset map, the database, is something that will need to be expansive and could be easily added to. So to help us with that, and part of what has been such a joy in this is that this was really the scale of which we are doing this work I have not seen done in Episcopal communities or in church communities in this way. And so we really bit off a big chunk. And we are currently working through some of that. So to take a pause where we are in the process now, to help us kind of figure out what we have and the best way to move forward with that data. And when we do that and have these 2 deliverables more set in what they will be, we plan on reopening this process so that it is an ongoing and living process of who we are at Christ in St. Luke's. So like I said, there's probably about 30 that are still active, and if we don't get responses from those in the next couple of weeks, I'll probably put like a week or 2 as a deadline for those, we are going to stop where we are. So that might put us around 175, 180 in this number, which is a significant number, and then we will start to do some of that process of looking at the database and continuing the work that we are doing with the what's the word I'm looking for? The report. That's why we're all here. So, if you missed your conversation, there will be time at a future date to have your voice heard. So, don't worry about that. Don't fret. And we really are excited for this being an ongoing and living process at Christ in St. Luke's. So that's my report. All of that is typed out here as well, and I will take questions at the end when we open it up for questions. But I now turn it over to finance.
Yes, we have our finance team. We'll have Maria present 2024 Statement of Financial Activities, as well as capital campaign update. Joe Painter, our stewardship chair, will talk about that campaign. I'll talk a little bit about our trust amendments, and Sigurd Whitaker will tell us a little bit more about what we can expect from those investments as well. And it is then we'll move into question and answer as a group. So if you're having questions about any of these reports as they come, try to hold on to them, jot them down, and we'll get to those in a few minutes. But Maria, I turn it over to you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Maria Booth, and I am the treasurer for Christ in St. Luke's. This morning, on behalf of the Finance Committee and Vestry, I would like to give you an update on the financial position of the church and provide an overview of our budget for 2025. You can find the financial report starting on page 18 of your printed packet if you want to follow along. I'm going to start with a brief report on the status of our capital campaign. As our renovation project draws to a close, our current cash balance is just over $170,000. And we saw an uptick in capital campaign pledge payments during the fourth quarter of 2024, growing from about $8,000 in October to $112,000 in December. So we really want to thank you for continuing to honor the commitments you made to this effort. As Father Noah mentioned, we still have some final bills to pay, but we are pleased to report that we did not need to tap into our Bank of America line of credit at any time during the final phases of this project, which is truly phenomenal, even as we completed work on the Lichgate Garden and the Te Deum stained glass window. So thank you very much for that. Please turn with me now to the operating fund reports beginning on page 20. The Statement of Activities provides a picture of revenues and expenses during the 2024 calendar year, while the Statement of Financial Position on the opposite page shows all of our assets and liabilities, including our current cash position. So under revenues on the Statement of Activities, we had a pledge fulfillment rate of 96%, which is extraordinary for a church of our size. We more than made up for the small number of unfilled pledges through other giving. Our contributions and offerings, including the Easter and Christmas offerings, exhibited strong growth again this year and well exceeded our budgeted expectations. I think the Christmas offering was double what we budgeted for, which was just amazing. At the bottom of the page, you'll see that we ended the year with a deficit. This was an anticipated shortfall, as we had planned for 2024 to be a rebuilding year. We stretched our budget to meet our staffing and programmatic needs to keep pace with the growth of our parish. Within last year's budget, the vestry agreed that the expected revenue gap could be filled with resources from significant cash reserves, which the church had on hand. Due to previous year's surpluses, like the one you see in 2023, the church has accrued a significant amount of savings, a portion of which we plan to use to cover this year's shortfall. And you can see that transfer noted at the bottom of page 20. The good news is that this budget shortfall ended up being much less than we had anticipated at the beginning of the year. And even after covering the gap, we still have a healthy cash cushion, as you can see in the Statement of Financial Position on page 21. To be clear, the remaining $4,000 deficit is not an outstanding balance due to be paid, but has been absorbed into our overall financial position. And the best news of all is that we do not anticipate having to use any further cash reserves to balance our 2025 budget. Father Noah and I worked closely with the church staff and the Finance Committee over the past several months to draft a balanced budget for 2025. And last Sunday, this budget, which is on page 22 of your packet, was approved by our vestry. And this morning, we would like to share with the parish a few of the major line item updates. Under revenue, you will notice that pledges are budgeted for $1.18 million, which is less than our stewardship goal of $1.2 million. And while we did exceed our stewardship goal, we typically see 4 to 5% of pledges remain unfulfilled at the end of the year, and so our budget accounts for that. As our capital campaign draws to a close, we know that we need to dedicate more resources in the operating budget to the upkeep of our buildings and grounds. To that end, we significantly increased the budget for maintenance, repairs, and utilities, and we hired a facilities manager, as was announced via email a couple of weeks ago. Additionally, all clergy and staff received a 3% cost of living adjustment, which was above the 2.5% recommended by our diocese. And we have budgeted a full year salary and benefits for one new additional full-time associate rector. You will also notice several new expense categories within the budget for next year, including congregational care, communications, music and liturgy, and Christian formation. Many expenses within G&A were realigned to these categories to better represent the use of our resources and the focus of our ministries to our congregation and larger community. For instance, congregational care now includes our new member and hospitality ministries. Communications includes marketing and the video ministry. Music and liturgy includes altar supplies and all things related to our children, youth, and adult choirs. And Christian formation includes our youth and family ministries and adult education. If you're interested in learning more, a detailed version of the budget is available upon request. At this time, I'd like to take a moment to recognize and thank the members of the Finance Committee who have been such an incredible support to me this past year, and I really look forward to working with them again in the year ahead. Will you all please stand? Melissa Thrasher West, Margaret Inge, Michael Belka, Judy Belka, Sigurd Whitaker, Rod Ingram, Joe Painter, and our parish's business administrator, Ms. Del Sturgis. Thank you so much. We are pleased to present this budget to you this morning, and we welcome any questions you may have in a few moments, as Father Noah said. But first, I'm going to turn it over to Joe Painter, our stewardship chair, to give us an update on our extremely successful 2025 stewardship campaign. So, Joe?
Good afternoon. I'm delighted to share or announce that we have surpassed our 2025 stewardship campaign goal. As of latest total, $1,012,988 have been pledged to date from 298 households. This includes 71 new pledges and 124 families or households who have increased their pledge for 2025 above the previous year. As remarkable as these numbers are, stewardship is about much more than just numbers. It represents a tangible way in which we keep community with each other and propel the mission and ministries of Christ in St. Luke's forward. It is a spiritual act. So, on behalf of the vestry, thank you. Thank you for participating. Thank you for giving and pledging generously. Thank you for investing in each other. As I conclude, I'd like to acknowledge and express gratitude for a team of volunteers who wrote thank you notes and made phone calls in support of our campaign. These include Michael Belka, Sarah Caro, Tulip Caro, Robert Jones, Steve Jones, Arthur Minocci, Kim Montalvo, David Phillips, Warren Richards, Joanne Robbins, and Joanne Short. And lastly, I'd like to thank Judy Belka, Michelle Sturgis, and Father Noah for their exceptional leadership and organization, which were instrumental in the success of this campaign. Thank you.
And thank you to Joe for running that, keeping us organized, and keeping everybody on point. I'm going to talk from down here for this point. want to move our mental minds out of the stewardship campaign and operating budget for a second into our trust agreement, which is the umbrella that encompasses a number of different funds. Sigrid will talk a little bit about those, and her report outlines some of their specific purposes and intent. But we have a number of invested funds here at the parish, and as I said in my report, there's been some important work done to revisit our agreement and make sure that it was in line with, it was as clear as possible and in line with the various missional goals of the parish. So out of those meetings, a couple of things happened. The first is actually not in here, but I mentioned it already. We have established what we're calling a capital reserve fund. And this is our attempt to start to save money now for large-scale capital projects that we can reasonably expect in the future, so that we do not have to run a campaign every time there's a major event, which we, if we had thought about it, probably could have foreseen. So that is a fund that will go up and down, and one of Steve's jobs and one of the jobs of the Buildings and Grounds Committee and the Finance Committee will be to monitor the level of that fund and be looking 5, 10, 20 years in the future to see how much money we need to start putting away now so that when we need a new roof, we are ready for it, or at least we're more ready for it than if we all of a sudden said, oh my gosh, who knew roofs sometimes break, right? So that is the intent of that capital reserve fund. It's a fund that will go up and down. It's not invested. It is all there to be used and will be used to various degrees through various years, depending on the foreseen needs. Now, in addition to the Capital Reserve Fund, we have taken what used to be called the Endowment Fund, which was our main fund, and we have renamed it the Capital Endowment Fund because it is restricted in its use to only capital purposes. And so we have been using that to help supplement the capital campaign that we've been running through the last few years. But now that we're coming out of that, we wanted to make sure it was clear that this money could only ever be used for capital projects, and not, and it's very clear in its outline of the documents, not to supplement the operating budget in the maintenance and upkeep of those particular projects. So this will be used for specific punctuated things and has been in the past, and our trustees, our financial trustees, are the ones who approve disbursements that are requested by the vestry for that money to be used. So there are other projects that will be able to be used. Sigrid will talk about the amount of money that's available for that. And we amended the trust so that the name specified that this is for capital purposes only. We also allowed within our amendments for that money to be put, if there was some that had not been used for a project in a given year, into the Capital Reserve Fund to prepare for what is restricted to be a major capital expense in the future. What this does is allows us to be proactive rather than reactive in the use of that fund, knowing that it will still very much be in line with the purposes for which it was given. I can answer questions about that in a minute, because the third major thing that we did as a part of these endowment powwows is to establish what we are calling the Carl Gainsland Fund. Many of you may remember that a couple of years ago, Carl Gainsland, a longtime member of our choir and leader within our parish, died suddenly at home. Carl had made provision in his will for a very sizable and generous bequest to the Church of Christ in St. Luke's that constituted both some financial gifts and the gift of a number of acres of farmland in North Dakota, which Carl had through a family. So currently, we are in the process of cycling through. We are sort of the last ones to get what's left over from all the disbursements, and Carl was very generous to this entire city, particularly the world of arts here in Norfolk and beyond. But we are the ones, and they have now officially given through all those, so we expect really in the next month or so to receive the totality of the financial disbursements from that gift. And Wiley and Grandy and Stephen Taylor have had a crash course in farmland real estate in North Dakota, which has been a fascinating process, but we have, just as of Carl's wishes were that the right of first refusal for purchasing that land would go to the farmers who are currently the tenants farming that land. So we have sent letters to those tenants. First, we had to get the land appraised, because we have no idea how much farmland that would go for in North Dakota, not in our area of expertise. So we've done that, and we have now sent those letters to those tenant farmers asking if they would like to purchase their farmland for that amount of money. Those letters just went out this week. I do not have an answer for you. If they refuse, the offer is given to one of the others to purchase land that was refused. And then, if there's a refusal at that level, then we go on to that being open to the sort of the open market, if you will, which you may be happy or interested to know in North Dakota is restricted from corporations purchasing, can only be individuals. So that is something we've learned along the way here. So I cannot tell you exactly how much that farmland will sell for, and I cannot tell you, because it has not actually all the way come through, exactly the amount that is that will be in the financial residuals that come to us. But this is a gift in the multiple millions of dollars, and the revenue that spins off from that gift is planned for in a very conservative way, planned for within our 2025 budget. One of the major reasons we do not have to tap any more cash reserves, as Maria said, moving forward, because we know that was not a sustainable practice, was not something we wanted to do, but got us from where we needed to be to where we are today. So we've established the Carl Gainsland Fund within the trust, and this is a fund that is unrestricted and meant to be used for the supplement of the operating budget, as distinct from the Capital Endowment Fund and some of the other funds which can either do that or not. So again, we'll answer some questions in a sec, but we continue to give thanks to Carl for his generosity, even though I have said before, and I will say again, I still would rather he were here. But he left us a really, truly remarkable gift that is, in the 400 years of this parish, by far the largest gift that we will have received, because for all our history, we had not accrued a significantly large endowment across our various funds. To tell you a little more about those funds, though, I'm going to turn this over to Sigurd Whitaker. Sigurd, if you want to go up to the pulpit so people can hear you, that would be great. But thank you.
So I'm Sigurd Whitaker, and I'm one of the trustees of the endowment. Some of you might know that I'm a published author and wrote a history of Christ in St. Luke's. A fewer number of you might know that I also have written 5 books related to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway or Indianapolis automobile industry. And I love going out and doing talks to them. And when I go out, I take out a PowerPoint and a series of index cards. Well, you know, this report is a little bit different, and I knew if I did that lo and behold, people would be saying, she's an idiot. So here we go. On behalf of my fellow trustees, Rod Ingram and Stephen Taylor, I am delighted to update you on the trust. The value of the trust at December 31st, 2024 was $5,683,334.84. The funds are managed by Bank of America, and we used a balanced funding approach. The target is 60% equities, i.e. stocks, and 40% bonds. For the last several years, we have been in the higher range in equities and lower in bonds, with the differential being held in cash. There are 6 funds in the trust. The building fund, i.e. the capital endowment, which supports capital repairs in our church facilities. The Christian Education Fund, the COP Fund, which provides short-term financial helps to individuals at the discretion of the rector, the Rectory Fund, which provides below-cost mortgages to the clergy, the Tucker Fund, which provides seed funding for new initiatives, and the Gainsland Fund, which provides support for the church operations. 4% of the funds, except for the Rectory Fund, can be distributed annually based upon a rolling 4-quarter rolling average. Those funds, which are not distributed during the calendar year, remain in the trust. In 2025, the trust can distribute up to $210,217.85 as follows. Building Fund, $83,167.20. Christian Ed Fund, $22,068.90. COP Fund, $10,444.64. Tucker Fund, $3,978.63, and the Gaisland Fund, $90,558.48. Since the Gaisland Fund is new and will grow from the proceeds of the sale of the real estate are received, the distribution from the Gaisland Fund will be recalculated when those funds are received. The distributions from the 4 legacy funds are down slightly from those in 2024. While this is counterintuitive, given the strong growth in equities during the past year, it reflects the cyclicality of the stock market. A market correction during the first 2 quarters of 2022 impacted the rolling 12-quarter average for distributions this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Singer. Thank you to Singer and to Rod and to Stephen, who are our financial trustees. We also have 3 real estate trustees, Michael Belka, Jamie Lewis, and Wiley Grandy, who are some of whom are here as well. So that is the sum total of our reports this morning, but I would like to open it up now for questions. So Corey, you've got a mic, and you're going to run through. And the reason we want to use the mic, even though I know everyone says you can hear me, right, we are recording and live streaming this, and they can't hear you. So please do use the mic and speak into that. I have first question up here, Corey, for Tim. How many acres? Tim, use the mic. Come on, man, I just said it. Corey, give him the mic so the people at home can hear Tim's question.
How many acres in North Dakota?
1,600 acres of farmland in North Dakota. What do they raise? It's mostly crop, but it's a variety of things. Yeah. Prissy, behind you, and then Andrew in the back.
What part of North Dakota is it in?
It is very, very, very far north in North Dakota. It's like you go to Minot, is that how you say it? And you go up. So if you know anything about North Dakota, it's like basically in Canada. And I'm not kidding. And I have it on my phone, the towns, to see what the temperatures are sometimes. And it is not an easy place to live, I will say. But it is very cold right now up there. Andrew, your question.
Hello. I would like, if that's within the scope of this meeting, to know if any outreach specifically towards the disabled, and perhaps setting up a disabled adult support group somewhere in this church, either in the parlor or somewhere else in the building.
Yeah, that's a great question, Andrew. We don't currently have a ministry as you describe, but we've had some really productive conversations with Hope House, just down the road, who works with adults with developmental disabilities and talk perhaps with them about some employment opportunities or other programming opportunities, perhaps a support group for families who are in their program as well. So maybe not exactly what you're thinking of, Andrew, but we're starting to have some of those conversations. And so if you want to help us with that, please let us know, okay? Great. Other questions? Right here, Mariana, and then Karen.
I wanted to thank you for your remarks in the sermon.
Thank you, Mariana.
And also to bring up from a baptismal covenant that it says, will you strive to respect the dignity of every human being? And I just thought that was very relevant. I also wondered if we could add to the baptismal covenant that we will do our best to take care of our earth, since if we are baptizing new children, we need to respect the sustainability of the earth for them.
I would agree with you, Mariana, so much so that if you hear our baptismal covenant and any of our current baptisms, that promise has been added as of General Convention 2015 or so as a trial use, so we do use it. It's not in the 79 prayer book, but it is there. Those who are being baptized here, will you protect and restore the dignity of all creation, and something that I can't remember off the top of my head, but something like that. So yes, a creation care-based baptismal promise is one that we use. Thank you. Karen, question up front here, Karen. Thank you.
Hi, this is for Father Jared. For the people who choose not to participate or aren't able to be reached for the Holy Listening campaign, are you at least compiling a minimal profile of those people so you have some idea of who they are and some just basic information about them?
Yeah, so part of what we sent out, there's two methods that we've used within the conversation. So one is just a straight up demographic survey, and it captures some of the boilerplate stuff of, where do you live? We look at different things like, reporting your job, income levels, a whole scope of things that are easy check the box sort of deal. So, that's open for anybody that would like to. That's a helpful way to get some of that demographic information. The scope of the conversations, though, are so much broader than that. And so really the only way to capture some of the data that we are getting from the conversations is to participate in one. So there is certainly a way for anyone to participate with the demographic survey if they choose to do so, but we would really encourage everyone getting into one of these conversations if they have the time and are comfortable doing so, because it really helps us know the congregation in a different way beyond just some of those labels that you'll find in the demographic. Because just knowing where you work and how much money you make doesn't tell us everything we need to know about you. So, and that's helpful. So if you don't feel like participating in one of those larger conversations, we'd be happy to take the demographic survey as well.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks, Karen. Yes, Bill, over here. Corey.
Do we know where our newcomers are coming from?
Do we know where our newcomers are coming from? Yeah, so our newcomer process, if a newcomer makes themselves known to us, and beyond just a handshake at the door, if they fill out one of our little visitor cards, which is part of the reason I call attention to these on a weekly basis, Rachel Welch gives them an email, and then I follow up with an email and a hope, or an invitation at least, for coffee. I'd say maybe 50% of the time I'm taken up on that offer. And yes, so I have an anecdotal sense of where our newcomers are coming from. And the short answer is they're coming from everywhere. Not in the sort of amount, but they're coming from a lot of different places. We do and continue to have a strong stream of folks who are finding their way to the Episcopal Church generally, and Christ in St. Luke specifically, from more, let's say, theologically conservative denominations. Be that a conservative Roman Catholic background or a conservative non-denominational evangelical background. This is one of the hotbeds in the country for those particular traditions, and there are a number of folks who find their way here when they find that tradition is no longer meeting their spiritual needs. We also have a number of folks, actually maybe even more, who are Episcopalians who just have sort of fallen out of the habit. They say, I was raised in the Episcopal Church, I went there for a while, I don't know, if something drove them to come back into the life of the church. And so we do have a fair number of those as well as mainline denominations, folks who are new to town or have been in town and a friend has invited them and told them to come and said, you may want to see what's going on or be a part of this. So I'd say we're getting multiple streams of folks coming in, and that's one of the exciting parts of being in this parish. It's not like we all know everything because we were all in the church together from the time we were in the crib. For us, we have a really wonderful diversity of experience, which we can celebrate together in our common worship and programs, etc. So a lot of different places. Natalie, right here. Corey.
I'm one of those newcomers. So my question is to Father Jared. You would have missed me in that conversation because I didn't join till like November. So will you come back and get me? Should I just sit tight? Do I reach out to you? Because I really would like to have that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to say now is that we did kind of that final call in December for getting names. And so those are the names we're working through at this point. So we're not going to take any more names or make any more assignments at this point until we kind of do some of the next phase of our data analysis so that we can enter back into that. So stay tight. There will be a lot of information coming out when we're ready to do that again.
To the next step. Okay.
Yeah. Great question.
Thanks, Natalie. Other questions? Betty wants to have the mic. Corey, up front here. No, you do need a mic. Everyone says, see, I don't need a mic. We do need a mic.
I just want to say that having been here for so long, I am in
Everyone
awe.
wants to hear this. This is going to be great because it's you.
I am in awe of what has been going on here in the past. It was overwhelming for me because when I came here, there was just maybe 3 of us working here, and we did it all. And now look at this place. It's amazing, and thank you so much for doing what you do. and for everybody that works here for doing what they do, because it's mind-boggling to me. And thank you.
Well, thank you, Betty. Thank you. Dave mentioned this, but this is, and this is, canonically true. It is true within our catechism as a church. Yes, we have a spectacular staff of people. Yes, we have some really incredible lay leadership. But Betty, the thing that makes this place what it is you all, is this place. It's when someone comes and says, I felt so welcomed. It's when someone comes and says, this is a place of love and acceptance and faith that I can really be a part of. That is because it is with everybody. It is not just one person was really nice to me. It is, I came and experienced something that was really transformative here, and I want more of that. So thank you for not just working here, but being basically Christ in St. Luke's. And to the rest of you, I don't just say that in a hyperbolic way. I really do mean it. This place is blessed with a congregation that is remarkable, not just in your gifts and talents, but in your willingness to be Christ's hands and feet and heart in this community and world. So thank you guys for that. And I won't make you clap for yourselves because that's weird, but that's the general idea. Yeah, we'll clap for you that are here. The church belongs to you guys. It doesn't belong to us. We are serving here, and we are very glad to be serving here. But it is you all that are this church. Thank you. A final question, John. Or two final questions, Joanne and then John. Corey, wait. Give it to Joanne, and then we'll go back to John there. Edith, could you give that over there? Thank you.
I think I might have asked this last year, so bear with me.
Sure.
In the budget, I can see where there are expenditures for Christian education, so forth, so forth. When it comes to outreach programs, and you kind of mentioned something about medical mission, possibly. When it comes to those programs, where does the money come from? What's allotted to it?
The money comes from the sort of general revenues. It is under the heading of missions and diocesan assessment.
How much is the diocesan assessment?
For 2025, it'll be about, 116,000, 117,000.
So it's about 15,000 left for any missions?
Currently, yes, for our current missions here, in addition to offerings we give through our clergy outreach and the COT Fund, which helps support local organizations as well.
Okay.
And if I could just clarify that I mentioned a possible medical mission. That was just a complete hypotheticals. That is not something we're currently looking at, unless we see it in the data, which we might. So, but just that was a hypothetical.
I like that one.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that point of clarification, Joanne. That diocesan assessment is tracked to 10% of your plate and pledge from 2 years previous. So our 2025 budget is our 2023 amount. So as we grow, the 10% that we give to the diocese grows with it, and so that has grown this year as well, about $30,000. John, in the back, you had a question. Behind you, Corey, right there. Yep.
Just as a general reminder, Nest is coming up. Have you gotten the volunteers you needed?
The Norfolk Winter Shelter.
Yeah. What was the question on it, Sergeant?
Well, I called it Nest, but now it's Norfolk something or another.
Yeah, so we've got a few spots left. I think Jamie had to run off to one of the winter shelter meetings, so he's not here. What we're going to do this week is send out our kind of final plea for the winter shelter. We're about 85 to 90% of the way there. What we really need right now are volunteers over that weekend. So I know it's Valentine's Day, but we could really use your support for a very important ministry to some of the most vulnerable among us. So if you have time, we're looking specifically for, I think, evening volunteers on February 14th, which is that Friday, and also on to the 16th, which is that Saturday. So looking at those 2 days, we also need help in the morning. Mornings have been harder to fill. I know it's an early start, but I know I see many early risers in here. So if you can get there to help with breakfast, which is really just kind of handing out some pre-prepared meals, that is super helpful for us as well as we kind of round that out. One thing, if I can, Noah, next week at the offertory, this will go out in the email this week. All of the funding, or every plate offering that we give next week during the 10:15 service is going to help us pay for Nest. Well, I shouldn't use the word Nest. We don't use it anymore. It's the Norfolk Winter Shelter. So that is part of our way of figuring out how to fund this. It's a substantial ask. We're looking at $5,000 to $6,000 just to run our 1 week. So if that's something you're able to help contribute towards next week as part of our offering, we'll lift that up as part of the full way of participating. So if you can't volunteer and that's a way that you can support, we'd love to have that.
And that is February 9th, is that correct?
February 2nd is the date.
February 2nd, we're going to take that collection.
I believe so.
Okay, yes, February 2nd, next week, we will take that collection up as well, and we will make that note in your Friday emails. Any other final questions or comments? Yes, Heidi? I do want you to wait, Heidi. I do want you to wait.
You had mentioned that there is the funding for a full-time associate rector. Is that correct? So has that search begun? And
that search has begun. The job is posted. If any of you know of qualified or worthy candidates that you'd like to consider coming to serve here with us, let us know. The job posting is up on our website as well as some various other church channels, and conversations have begun already, and so we're very hopeful for that. I can't give you a timeline right now, but it has started, and as you all know, these processes take months to roll on, but we're optimistic and hopeful, very much so. All right. So not seeing any more hands, I'll turn it back over to Dave to move to adjourn the meeting.
All right, are those wooden pews feeling right now? Do I have someone who will move to adjourn the meeting? Maria Booth, do I have a second? All in favor of adjourning the annual parish meeting? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.